Okay, so today we are going to be talking about ethics in our book. So if we could turn to page 225, 226, we're going to look at the idea of ethics and see what we can compare between the various worldviews. How do they see ethics? How do they see morality? Where does morality come from? What is it? So let's take a look at this. Page 226, there's a difference explained here between ethics and morality. That's fine, it's not too complicated. Ethics is the study of moral conduct, values, and duties. It's a guide to action. Ethics answers the question, how should we live? How should I live? And it proposes a way to think about this. What's the most important thing? What's valuable? What is love? Is there love? What does it mean? Where did it come from? If you go look at the page 227, morality is a personal standard of determining right and wrong. So ethics is the philosophical study of morality. Ethics is the system. Morality is the content. So morality is a container of right and wrong. Ethics is the study of how we discover this container of rights and wrongs. Where did that come from? So everybody has some notions of morality, what's right, what's wrong. But where did the system, the container of right and wrong, come from? How did we get it? Why are we moral? The alligator eats other alligators, or you, or the lion, he doesn't feel wrong about it. The mosquito bites you, doesn't have a sense of guilt. You and I have a sense of guilt. We have a conscience. How did this happen? Why is anything wrong if there's no God? That's the atheist dilemma. If there's no God, why is anything wrong? Think about it. All right, so ethics then is, a pattern, a structure that contains codes for behavior. We need to think of where does it come from? Where is this pattern? And I like the quote by Calvin Linton, professor at George Washington University, said that a pattern of ethics is in every culture. And this is true. Every single people group, wherever you go on earth, has rights and wrongs within their culture, within their nation. Why is that so? Are they all vastly different? Not completely. There's a bunch of common things in it. And basically what anthropologists have found is the commonality is largely built around the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are mostly universal amongst tribes, even if they've never heard of the Bible. How would that happen? Well, that would be explained, but that would be evidence that would explain God. That's evidence. So he says this, there's a basic pattern of similarity among ethical codes. Such things as murder, lying, adultery, cowardice are, for example, almost always condemned. The universality of the ethical sense itself, the being ought, the oughtness, you should do this, and the similarities within the code of diverse cultures indicate a common moral heritage for all mankind, which materialism or naturalism cannot explain. So that's a huge bit of evidence for the existence of God. If all human cultures, whether they're Christian or not, contain a code largely which expresses these things, and it's universal, then naturalism or evolution has no explanation for this. Evidence for Christianity. Okay, so let's zoom along here now. We'll go over the page to 228. What is the good life? So theories about ethics are shaped around this particular purpose. What's a good life? What's the right kind of life? So there's two theories about ethics itself. Teleological, which has to do with the purpose. What's the end of it? What am I aiming at? I want to have a good life. So what does good life mean? That's a purpose-driven, that's teleological. Teleological question is, what's the good life? What's the purpose of a good life? So here's some philosophers down through the ages who have attempted to answer some of these questions, or who have framed a philosophy, created a philosophy. We have Aristippus, the philosopher, who basically was involved in the creation of a philosophy called hedonism. Hedonism, which is the human beings should maximize their own personal pleasure. So have you heard of this philosophy in our culture today? Yes. Okay, yes. Is it becoming more and more prevalent? I would say so. I want to do what I want, some people say. I got rights. Who are you to tell me I can't have an abortion or kill my grandmother or do this and that? It's wrong for you to tell me I'm wrong. But there are no wrongs, except what you just said. Okay, so anyway, hedonism. Aristotle, I studied him in my philosophy degree. Eudaimonism. This was a little bit better than pure hedonism. The purpose of human existence is to live a life of flourishing. You know, it sounds good, but you still have to decide what flourishing means for a headhunter, for a cannibal, for a sexual pervert. I mean, not everybody has a noble sense of flourishing, right? That's why we have jails. You know what some evidence against evolution is? Jails. Why do we put people in jail for doing what evolution made them do? You get me here, right? Jails tell me some behavior is wrong. Why? If there's no God, why is anything wrong? So you got it, see? The atheist is in trouble. Jeremy Bentham came up with a philosophy called utilitarianism. What is ethical is to pursue the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now, this sounds noble too, doesn't it? Well, whatever works for the greatest number. Well, who's going to determine what's the greatest good for the greatest number? Now we got a problem. You see, people today say the world's overpopulated, right? So what's the right thing to do in Canada? We need a euthanasia law, right? Well, there you go. That's utilitarianism. What about killing people who are elderly? Well, you know, think of it this way. I mean, they lived long enough, right? We don't have the bed. And besides, you know, the world's overpopulated. So the end, the thought about the end justifies the mean. And it's moral to kill people in Canada now and euthanasia. It's morally good because the world's overpopulated. So that type of thinking leads to some pretty horrific moral actions in an instant. Abortion. Well, you know, the world is overpopulated. And besides, you know, babies might suffer in this family. It's the best thing for them to kill them now. Ooh. Utilitarianism. So these philosophies are right here. When you hear people talking about, you know, the end, we're, you know, global warming. I mean, look, it's so real, they say, and it's going to take over everything. It's only right that we stop all logging and oil pipelines and everything, because that's evil to destroy our planet. Utilitarianism based on a presumed ideal objective, which most often false, right? Okay, Thomas Hobbes, ethical egoism. This don't sound good. The good life is being free to look after one's own interests. Well, whoa. Why did we fight Hitler then? He was just looking after his own interests. So why stop somebody who's butchering people? I mean, they're looking after themselves, right? I mean, those people blockading the pipeline are just looking after their own interests, right? What's wrong with that? Too bad that 10,000 or 20,000 people are out of job. I mean, these people are just looking after their interests. Who are you to tell them they don't have the right to look after their interests? Well, because then I got a right to look after my interests, and so does the 200,000 people unemployed got a right. So where do we calculate it? Well, then we got to talk about rights. So you see how some of this stuff works out? Don't ever think philosophy is something from the past. Those things are idea systems that are lived out and become policy and become laws. And you elect people based on some of this. You do. So, John Stuart Mill, ethical libertarianism. People live best when they have liberty, but agree not to harm others. So he's trying to put a not harm thing in there. Well, what does that mean? Babies die in abortion. They feel harmed, I'm sure of that. So what do you mean? We want liberty, but you're taking lives. Friedrich Nietzsche, moral skepticism. Objective moral knowledge is either inaccessible or impossible. So in other words, morality, there's no logic to it and there's no basis to it. And Nietzsche ended up committing suicide. He was part of a philosophy called existentialism, which teaches truth comes through your experience, only through your experience. He committed suicide because he thought that suicide was the ultimate experience which would give his life meaning. It did, all right. He's dead. He tried to live out his philosophy. Okay, John Dewey, pragmatism. Maybe that's it. Whatever works is good. Since truth is whatever works, morality is whatever is useful for society. Can you see any dangers in these wordings? What do you mean it works? It works to kill people. That's what Hitler taught. That's what a lot of these bombers are doing, and these genocidal leaders we've had in the past, like Nebuchadnezzar, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot, and Napoleon, and Hitler, and Kim Jong-un. It's working for them. They can kill anybody they want. It works. Yeah, well, there's going to be lots of conspiracy and stuff going around about this, so hold on to your hats. But, let's go back to this one. Jean-Paul Sartre, of course, he too is in existentialism. Since we create our own meaning, we ought to do whatever helps us become our most authentic self. Well, a sexual predator is authentic. He feels authentic. A serial predator. We're letting them out of jail now. The police put warnings on my TV. Warning, we just released a serial sexual offender into your neighborhood. Great. Thank you. What's wrong with the law here? He's got his own, sense of authentic self. It doesn't match with mine. So what's going to happen? All right. So that's the kind of theory. What's the good life? Then theories about what we ought to do are called deontological. Don't worry about the philosophical words coming. The desired end of an action, what we ought to do, what is right because it's right to do, not because there's some end, not because it's useful, not because it works, but simply because it's right. What's moral, we do because it's right. So then Immanuel Kant tried to think this through using reason, transcendental idealism. Our duty as humans is to figure out what's good without qualification and then pursue it. In other words, he tried to use pure reason. Let's just think about this. What would be good to do just because it's good to do? Trouble is you have no reference point outside your head. So he had trouble using pure reason to come up with some moral code that we all ought to listen to. Not for our own benefit, but because it's right. That was a good word. I mean, he's hard to read, this guy. These guys were not simpletons. You study Immanuel Kant, you kind of go, whoa, these guys were thinkers. Then you've got Rene Descartes, rationalism. God has made us thinking beings, so we must use our reasoning to live virtuously. Well, again, you have a problem. How do you know what reasoning is and whether it's good? Why is reasoning about something making it good? You ever heard a kid reason about why? Perhaps you had perfect children, but have you ever heard them reasoning about how they should only have ice cream for dinner tonight and not eat their vegetables? It's perfectly reasonable, Mom. I like it. You're going to eat your vegetables. Mom, that's unloving. That's unkind. I want that ice cream. And they'll chuck a tantrum showing they're fallen creatures. That's more evidence for the Bible. They're fallen. They get angry. They're sinful. Evidence. Do you give in to their reasoning? No, the reasoning's based on self-interest, not their own well-being that you are looking at. Not just their sweet tooth, but their health. So their reasoning is not going to help in that situation. Okay. So let's move on to some of the basis for it. We're going to see that we're going to start looking at the worldviews now. I like page 230. A true theory of ethics ought to be livable by human beings. A true theory of ethics must help us recognize, and this is a key thing. I want you to get this. Page 230, the third paragraph, opposite the little box. A true theory of ethics must help us recognize that not everything that's legal is right, and that an unjust law has no purpose if it defies the laws of God. Okay, let's get this straight. A lot of people say, well, it's right because it's legal. It's legal, therefore it's right. It's legal to have abortion. What are you doing fighting that? Don't you know it's legal? It's legal to smoke marijuana now. What's your problem? It's legal for euthanasia. Well, what they're not teaching lawyers, I have a number of law professor friends, is what makes the law right? Who says the law is right? Who can say when the law is right? Think about it. Where do judges get their reference point? If they're human, and they are human. So why should we assume that the Canadian Supreme Court that decides abortion is good and legal, why should that make it good? Who determines the definition of good on a planet full of humans? Do you get the problem here? Who's going to define the good when you got competing humans who are selfish, fallen, wicked, self-interested? Let's come up with a definition. We'd have trouble here defining a good pie, probably in our room here. What's a good pie? You might like this, you know, I mean, think of that. Let alone, let's come up with a definition of what's good morally. Unless you have God as a reference point, all your definitions are going to be relative. So what we have is a Supreme Court and politicians who've decided what good is. It's good to block that pipeline because oil is black and it gets dirty. I'm sorry, I'm a bit sarcastic. It's part of my Australian background. That oil is dirty oil. Well, I never saw clean oil. You know, looks black to me. Anyway, it's good that we should destroy the economy because, after all, moose are dying. Wolves don't have enough to eat, and owls need trees. So then it begs the question, why are those things good to keep? So you've got to ask that question. Why is it good to save the environment or protect the environment? I mean, I'm not saying it isn't, but any part of ethics, if you're going to think about it, and should, must entertain the whole and the purpose of life, not just the fact there's a few owls in those woods in North Vancouver, so you cannot go skiing anymore. It just disturbs them. And we're going to make a law. No one. And we're going to shut down Grouse Mountain because it's absolutely evil to think baby owls are being disturbed by the noise of loud skiers. Do you think such a law might exist? Those kind of laws exist all over the place. Don't kid yourself. They do. So, why is it good to protect an owl? You still have to have a worldview to explain the good. And I'm not saying it's bad. I like owls too. But would I shut down Grouse Mountain for an owl? No. My values would rank differently. So we have to look at this thing, and ultimately it comes back to the question is, where do I get my definition of what's good in order to say that's bad, or that's bad, or this is good? Where do I get that? Who gives me that? Where did you read that? So either we take it from God, who told us, hey, by the way, this is what's good for you. And I'll give you a very simple illustration. You do this all the time. When I got my Kia secondhand and one of the headlights was out, I said, honey, go look in the glove box, see if they left a manual in there. And they did. So I bought, oh, good. There's a Kia manual. You know, headlights are not easy to take out, right? You don't just sort of unscrew the front. You got to go in the back, take out the battery. Sometimes it's complicated. So I went to the manual to tell me how to do it. I didn't just use my idea. I went to the designer. And the designer has your good in mind, okay? Kia wants to help you. They really do. When they made that car and they put all those pieces together, somebody designed it. I'm telling you, every bit of wiring was put together by somebody who's a mechanical engineer, architect, or whatever. No coincidence in anything in there. But they thought of you. And they said, please. They don't say please. They just say put oil. Put oil in here. This is how much. Don't put water in here. Only oil. And put gasoline here, but not here. And this is how much air you put in your tire. And make sure you change the filter every while and then. Make sure you do this. Now, why are they telling you that? Just to harass you? No, because that's what's good for the car. That's the ultimate best for that car. It is not the best thing to leave it to you to make up your own mind. Do you agree? You know, you ladies, okay, we're going to go for it. You know, make that car work. And you forget to change the oil, and, you know, you won't have a car after 100,000 K. You'll be dead long before that. You go, well, what happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. You didn't listen to the manufacturer who had your best interest in mind when he gave you how to make it work. And isn't that what God did with the Bible? Here's how you work. A man should marry a woman, not another man. And you have children, and those children should be taught about me and who a man and a woman is, so that they themselves can make a family and produce children who can then marry and have children. That's the only way you're going to have a civilization. You got another way? Let's hear it. Homosexual's going to marry? There's no kids. Lesbian's going to marry? There's no kids. So where are you going to get the egg and the sperm? I'll just give you some reality. You need an egg and a sperm. You are an egg and a sperm product, right? Your mommy and daddy. So you're not here if you didn't have an egg and a sperm and a male and a female. True or false? That's evidence for the Bible, which says male marries a female. That's evidence, not the model today supported in Canada that marriage can be whatever anybody wants. Two women and a man, 3. Hey, it's all good. No, it's not all good. Because somewhere you have to reproduce. Somebody has to reproduce, or you're dead. Or you're going to have massive immigration, which we're getting. Because everybody wants to do those dumb things. They don't want to get married. They don't want to marry a man. They don't want to have children. Your civilization is going down. So you'll suck in 1 million immigrants to keep the thing up there. But you know, in doing that, you're going to kill yourself off if you bring in worldviews that don't like you. And that's what we're getting, okay? Yeah. Bernie Sanders, let's go. Well, I shouldn't name it. Let's be communists. It really ain't going to work. Free everything. Oh, that's sorry. I'm jumping ahead. I'm getting off topic. Okay, back. Isn't this fun, though? It all comes down to some ethics. We better jump back into this book. Okay, so let's look at the secularist. Secularism. Now, by the way, if I didn't mention it back in the philosophy sections, philosophies are created by humans. They're not God. Secularism. Okay, let's take another one. Let's go back to humanism. Think of anything. We covered a couple of these ones. Hedonism, eudaimonism, utilitarianism, egoism. Do you know something? They all end in ism. Okay, the reason they end in ism is a human created them, and philosophies end in isms. So if you hear somebody come up with something new, you know, well, environmentalism has become popular. All philosophies end in an ism. And what it does, what a philosophy is a way to prioritize that thing. So if you take the female, I see females, nothing wrong with females, but if I create feminism, I will put the female on top of the value system, and then everything else gets lower priority. So when you create a philosophy, any one of these philosophers here, hedonism, he put pleasure on top of the value. But the most important thing is pleasure. If you create feminism, the most important thing is women. And we need to have 60% women in every job in Canada. Otherwise, that's discrimination. Really? How about qualified people? Don't worry about that. What matters is your sex. Oh, so genderism is your philosophy. Yes. Genderism. The philosophy that a certain gender must have priority. And everything else is lower. So if you're a white male, Christian, married, you're going to be one of the most discriminated against in some parts of this country in certain job classifications, because after all, we're looking for a different gender. Genderism, big philosophy nowadays, isn't it? Big. Transgenderism has become even more powerful and oppressive, because you don't have rights to call your own daughter by her name if she decides she thinks she's a male, or not a male, she's a boy. We're going to go to court in BC, and it's right now in the courts. A father cannot call his child, who is a female, who decides she wants to identify as a boy, he can't call her by her name. or go to jail. A new law has come in called family violence. BC. So hey, don't think philosophies are not moving and working. They are, and they're deadly, and they're dangerous, and the Christian must not be caught in them. Colossians 2:8.
Say, I need to call my mom or dad.
They're taking mom and dad out. Why? Because two lesbians are going to be looking for a sperm donor. Where else are they going to have a baby? Who's going to donate that? You mean you're going to find a male? Why don't you just find another female? After all, that's what you like. Because it ain't going to work. Evidence is you need a male and a female. Right? So every child, think about this, has a mother and a father. Every child born, any human born, whether to two lesbians or two, they're not born to them, but well, a lesbian could have a baby, but it has a father, okay? And that's the person being left out of this equation. The child is being robbed of truth that it has a daddy. It's being raised by two people who call themselves mummies. That's, in biblical terms, that's evil to the child. It's abuse to a child. It's telling a lie to a child that you have two parents who are the same sex. That's a lie because there is a sperm donor in this picture. That is the father. And that father should have rights, in my view, just like an access. I mean, it's complicated, but we're digressing here. But philosophies are dangerous, and the Bible says in Colossians 2:8, see to it you're not captured by philosophy. I repeat, see to it you're not captured by philosophy. Well, here's a bunch right here. You might be into utilitarianism. Watch the way you think, even about pipelines, even about trees. I don't care. How do you think? Do you think in terms of God's values, or do you think in terms of the court, or the pipeline system, or the provincial government, or whatever? You know, be careful we don't eliminate a biblical point of view. So what is a biblical point of view? We'll get there as soon as we jump past secularism. So secular atheism is the view that morals are relative. And I'm going to show this slide series quickly in, say, about 5 minutes, if we can push through this. Maybe I'll save that for after the break. Actually, I'm going to do that. Save it for after the break. Okay, atheists, where do they get their ideas of right and wrong? Well, where are they going to get it? I mean, if they only have themselves to refer to, where are you going to think what's right and wrong? They are stuck in something, a philosophy called relativism, moral relativism. And that is the idea, what's right for you is right for you, what's right for me is right for me, and you can't tell me what to do because I got my system, you got your system. Now, the trouble is, why can't that work? Why can't that work? Why do we have jails? Isn't a jail a statement against that? Hey, you just killed 3 people. You're going to jail. Why? For me, that was right. If relativism's true, what's right for me is right for me. I don't have a problem with that. Those 3 people were kind. I mean, the world's overpopulated. I mean, look, they were bothersome, okay? So what's your problem here? It's wrong. Says who? I feel perfectly fine about it. See the problem with relativism? Who's going to judge? There's no judge in relativism. So who's going to judge? Why are anybody in jail? Hey, I'm really innocent, that the people in jail are saying, right? They're not remorseful. They're not sorry. Yeah, I did it, but hey, why bother me? I mean, I don't feel good in here, you know? Jails are not nice. Why are you doing this to me? Well, you killed 3 people. Yeah, but I mean, hey, everyone's got their own values, right? Relativism can't work. It can't build a livable world because you've got no way to make a law. Somebody has to make a law. This is right, that's wrong. Once you make a law, relativism's gone. Once you say you're going to jail for this, 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 or this, relativism's gone. So how can people live relativism then? They can only do it in their own little personal lives. You can't get stopped by the RCMP on the highway doing 150 kilometers an hour, and he goes, well, you know, you're speeding, and say, well, it's in my reality, I'm not. Well, in mine, you're guilty. I got radar. He said, well, I don't believe in radar. You know, I got my own reality. We all create our own reality. Put your hands behind your back and get out of the car. Yeah. You soon find out evidence that the world doesn't work through relativism, right? No law would work. Police couldn't do anything. Stop signs wouldn't work. Nothing would function if everybody was free to do whatever they wanted in their own way at all times. It just, what side of the road are you going to drive on? That yellow line means nothing. I mean, it couldn't work. So relativism is bad news, but that's the foundation of atheist thinking. That's the foundation of some of our political leaders, some of our court people. They will change all the time if some new little thing comes up in their head. Yeah, euthanasia, that's perfectly good for some people. Okay. Okay, see how that works? So we'll get back to relativism, but I want to cover this first. So if evolution's true, then relativism's true, because evolution can't produce morality. Well, why would evolution tell you how to live? I mean, it's an accident. It's like saying an avalanche is going to organize itself into a beautiful sculpture. It's not. Chaos never becomes order. So how did this whole thing come together? You're telling me that evolution wants something? This whole personifying of evolution is ridiculous. Evolution wants us to love each other. What? Who is this Mr. Evolution? You know what they're doing? Adding God to a process of chance and giving chance. If this is what evolution is, random chaos is suddenly intelligent with a purpose, and it loves you and it wants you to survive. What? Try to find that in an avalanche, right? No. So that's the problem with atheists. They bring values into their system that don't belong in that system. They're actually biblical values. They import biblical values. Evolution wants. Excuse me. Evolution is planned. Excuse me. You're giving intelligence to this. Evolution is designed. Whoa, hold it. Those things require personhood with intelligence. They require a God. They're personifying nature. Mother Nature wants. That's how they do it. The atheist brings a godlike quality to nature that has a motive, an intention, and that's not factual at all. Okay, let's move beyond that. Moral relativism, I'm going to come back to it to see how it falls apart, but you can see that. Morality is relative or defined by the individual or culture. And of course, then they're into situation ethics, page 233, which is I'm going to decide what action is right based on how I feel right now in this situation. So in this situation right now, you know, if I feel adultery is the right thing to do for me now, then that was okay. Well, yeah, I thought you were married and you made a vow. Yeah, but right now, you know, it's different. And for me right now, this is the decision. That's moral relativism. Situation ethics is common. People are going to flip and flop based on how they feel at any one time. Scientism, this is an interesting thing because scientism is a philosophical belief that knowledge is obtained only through the scientific method. Now, the scientific method is something is a fact or a scientific truth. It's observable, it's quantifiable, it's repeatable, and it's demonstrable. You know, we can boil water over and over. However, the universe cannot be repeated. It cannot be observed as coming from nowhere. It can't be measured. It can't be observed as starting from nothing. So scientism is a philosophy that's trying to say only science has value. However, and only if you use the scientific method. However, think about this, that claim itself, that only science is valid for discovering truth, cannot be proved with their own method. Scientism, if cannot be proved, that we can only gain knowledge through science, that statement cannot be verified by the scientific method. You get it? No? You get it? So what a contradiction. There you go. So evidence against an idea is contradictions, right? If somebody says there's no truth, you ask them, then what you said is true, isn't it? Do you believe it's true that there's no truth? Yes. Well, then there is a truth. What you believe. See, that person is a contradiction. That is evidence against atheism. All those things. See, so there's so much evidence where Christianity doesn't have those kinds of contradictions because morality comes from God, not from us. So there's a standard. All right, so let's go on. So the science trying to discover moral principles from intelligence and simply using scientific information, it's not going to work. That's not where morality is. You know why? Because morality, where's morality located, by the way? In your blood system? Of course, we are now. Sorry that we're jumping ahead, but that's okay. We may not get to every point, jumping ahead into the human nature chapter. But where's morality? Is it in your blood, bones, back, head? I think it's in here. What do you think?
It's immaterial.
It's immaterial.
Intangible.
Yes, that's true. But where is it then? Right? Getting close. It's in your heart. It's in the heart, right? You make a heart choice. I love you. It's also a heart commitment. The Bible tells you to be careful about your heart. Watch over your heart. Don't let it get attached to any wrong thing. You ever notice that? That's good, isn't it? When you get that heart attached to the wrong woman, don't let your heart get made. Don't get attached to that. I just went to the boat show. I was careful not to let my heart get attached to some of those boats. I said to my wife, honey, look, she said, keep walking. Keep walking. Now, but it's okay for a man to dream, right? You know, wasn't my reality, I tell you that. I didn't have that 300 grand or whatever. Whoa, some boats. All right, so can science establish morality? No, because science is a method of observing, and it requires humans. Science isn't a thing. It's humans looking. But humans don't look neutrally. Humans have motive. Humans have limitations. Humans are finite. Humans are wicked. So science itself is guided by oftentimes humans that aren't exactly neutral. Okay? They don't want to teach creation in any public school. They're not going to teach creation at UBC. Why not? Because we don't accept that. Simply as that. I once had a professor. I used to run a course in Australia where I bring in professors to teach, and this I had professors of chemistry and physics, chemistry, embryology, and I remember this chemistry professor teaching at a local, very well-known university. And he came in and he taught, and I knew, I do not invite people to come and teach who are not creationists, period, or who are not believers, period, or who haven't thought about their discipline from a biblical point of view, period. And I knew he was. He was a Catholic, loved the Lord. I'm not against Catholics if they love Jesus and he's their Savior. I'm not against Presbyterians, Anglicans, or Baptists either. Traditions are traditions. It's a question of whether they know the Lord, right? So I said, now you're a professor of chemistry over here at this university. And he just spent about 3 days with the periodic table, all the elements and the gases and everything, argon and neon and lead and zinc and potassium and sodium. And he explained it all. And I said, now, sir, do you believe that all those elements in the universe could come from nowhere? And he sort of looked at me and said, no, he said. I mean, I knew he was going to say no because I was doing it for the students' benefit. So you don't think those could come from nowhere? He said, no. Why not? Well, the organization of matter on this table has no gaps whatsoever. In other words, from the first, I can't remember what is the first element. Huh? Hydrogen, 1 proton, 1 electron. Anyway, it's valence or whatever. I didn't take chemistry since grade 11. Anyway, all the complication of the valence is the number of protons, electrons, and neutrons climb in the sequence, okay, with no gaps until you get to the inert gases. So he said there can be no new matter in the universe existing. This is it. Everything is complete. The chart, it could not be, there is no gap of 1 new electron missing out of this atom. I said, you don't think evolution could do that? I said, no. I said, but you work in a university over there, right? And you're in a department that's full on atheist. I mean, I did 2 degrees at that university in philosophy. Anyway, so I said, but you teach in a department that believe and teach evolution, right? He goes, yes. I said, but how is that possible? How is that possible that they can't see just what you said? He said, it's not a matter of the facts. They don't want to believe. It's a motivation. They have the facts, and this is again another issue dealing with evidence. The facts of chemistry, physics, whatever you want, are there for all to see. Those people who don't want to look with the reality that this cannot happen on its own, shut out the truth, suppress the truth, the Bible says. The wicked suppress the truth in unrighteous hearts and choose to believe what they want. It's a darkened heart, Romans 1, that leads to a darkened understanding. Okay? Right? Professing to be wise, they became fools, it says in the Bible. Worshipping creatures, no, that's Canada now. Let's protect whales, dolphins, beavers, and everything else. Worshipping creatures instead of the Creator, who's given us a purpose for the environment, but not to worship it, not to stop a process called biblical development. So we got to look at that one. That's going to govern how we treat the whales, etc. Okay, we need to have a break. I'm going to stop here and pause this and come back. And we're going to cover the rest, and then I'm going to put this series on. So let's pause this for a minute. Okay, we had a little break. We're going to come back, and we're at secularism. And before we get to Marxism, I just want to put this slideshow up here to look at some of the problems of relativism. The idea that truth is what individuals think or say, and that moral truth is what they feel for themselves. It has no external reference point. So let's just go to this, see if I can put it on. Now, let me see if this is going to even work. Okay, maybe this isn't going to work. Okay, we'll hold on this. It's not going into my slideshow mode, so what I'm going to do is just go slide by side. Okay. Somehow, there's some technical difficulties happening here. Okay, I'm sorry, something's gone glitchy with my PowerPoint. And I'm gonna have to just take a few minutes to go back to it. That got rid of it. Oh, that's natural. I see, that's why. Okay, so this could be, I've got two things happening at once. That makes perfect sense. Shut this off. Okay, good. 1 second, sorry about this. Let's see if this might work. Please, I think it might work. Let's try it. Okay. What are some truths about truth? What's true about truth? Here are some. Truth is discovered, not invented. I want you to think about this. So, humans are not the source of truth. I would like for you to think about this. When people say, I have my own truth, ask them what they mean by that. Think about it. Invent a new truth right now. In any area of life, pick anything you want, from physics to chemistry to math to math. Invent a new truth. You know, you can't. You know why? We're not the authors of truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. If evolution were true, we could invent truths all the time. Truth is whatever we come up with now. So truths are discovered, not invented, which means somebody created truth. Jesus said we could know the truth. Now, other religious leaders were searching for the truth, like Buddha, searching to find enlightenment, or in the new spirituality, trying to discover ourselves, guiding ourselves to a spiritual evolution, trying to find truth, starting with us. You can't find truths if you start with yourself. They're not human made. You can discover them. Truth is true for all, everywhere, at all times. So if something's true, gravity, it's true for everybody, everywhere. If murder's wrong, it's wrong everywhere. Otherwise, you could never have a court. Why would we go fight Hitler if murder was perfectly good in Germany? Why go bother them? They've decided. So people who say, well, if something's legal, it's right. Well, then look, killing the Jews in Germany was legal. It was fully legal under the Nazis. Why are we going over there to stop them? That's their system. That's perfectly valid to them. See the problem with relativism? You got no reason to have a supreme court. What do you got a UN for? Just everybody has their own values. Why do you want to have universal justice, courts of justice? There's no such thing, is there? Is there a universal definition? Not without God, there isn't. Think about this. What's justice to a Muslim? What's justice to Hitler or Mao Zedong or me? If we got no reference point, and by the way, I did a course on justice at the university. It was a lot of fun trying to listen to atheists trying to figure out how to define justice. If you got no reference point, there's no definition. Justice is getting what you deserve. How many want justice? I do. If I spend my money for a burger, I expect to get a burger, not a paper napkin. They say, well, we're out of burgers, but here's a napkin. I thought I paid for a burger. Yes, true, but this napkin will have to do for today. That's not justice. Say, wait a minute. That's not right. Well, it's right for me. Here's your napkin. Take it or leave it. That's relativism. What are you going to say? I'm coming behind the till, get that burger. No, because you expect justice. All right. Truth is unchanging. You can't change it. Gravity's gravity. Tables, this is a table. It's not going to be anything but a table. Unless I grind it up and turn it into sawdust, but that's a table made into sawdust. Beliefs cannot change a fact. This is really important. Sincerity doesn't create truth. But I'm really sincere. Look, there's 1 billion Hindus on this planet who believe reincarnation's true. Right? They believe a cow's a reincarnated person. They believe that when they die, they're going to go out and come back king or a millionaire. Is there any evidence for that? None. No evidence there you go. No evidence for reincarnation. But we got evidence for resurrection. I'll listen to Jesus before I'll listen to Buddha. Buddha was looking for God. Jesus said, I am God. Wait a minute. A big difference in those claims. Nobody claims to be God. Anybody can claim to be searching for God. Muhammad never once said he was God. Of course not. He too was hoping he could get to heaven through his behavior. Even he didn't know. As he's human. He had a code of ethics. Only way to get to heaven, guaranteed for a Muslim, is die in a jihad. To get killed flying a plane into New York. That's one guaranteed way you're going to get to heaven for a Muslim. Otherwise, why do you think they fly those planes? And it wasn't the U.S. conspiracy. Muslims flew the planes. And they trace them all back to Saudi Arabia, to the Wahhabi Muslim movement. It fits perfectly within any other form of Islamic suicide bombing. It's the only one worldview that does that. One, not the Buddhists, not the Hindus, the Muslims. Why would Muslims do that all over the world? Bomb themselves, blow themselves up in buses, trucks, planes, stores. Heaven, man. They can get to heaven that way. No, 72. Truth is not affected by attitudes. Sincerity doesn't create truth. Attitudes don't create truth. You can't have your own truth. And all truths are absolute truths. Now, somebody said, I talked to a guy, I got to give this story. I've used conversations like this with many people. I encourage you to talk to people in a different way about the Bible now. Not that you're going to hide facts, but what you're going to do is try to open up a person's thinking in a different way. So I was sitting on a university campus many, many years ago, and witnessing or trying to talk to people, students sitting there, and I said to this one guy, I don't jump in and say, the Bible says this or that. I never tell people I'm a Christian. Why would I do that? You're just inviting them to spew their garbage on you. So I come in like a stealth fighter. I'm there to destroy his fortress, not let him attack mine, right? I'm going on the offensive, not the defensive. I'm not here to defend Christianity. I'm here to destroy atheists. That's my view. I'm on planet Earth to destroy these worldviews, not to defend myself against them. I'm on the offensive. So I want to get this atheist. So I said, so I like to think of something going on around us, talk about the politics, talk about pipeline, talk about whatever you want. So I said, hey, what do you think about what the government's doing? Now, this was in Australia many years ago with the economy, with mining. Oh, yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong, man. We shouldn't be mining. There's plenty. Those animals need protection from these mining companies. Oh, okay. Well, what do you think about, what do you think about that government minister, with what he's been doing in that bill, that policy? Oh, yeah, I think that's right. Every woman has a right to an abortion, and government should leave that alone. It's a woman's choice, right? So, yeah, that's right. What do you think about this, and what do you think about that? So I gave him about 10 things. What do you think about this bill and that bill? And he said, this is right and that's wrong, and this is right and that's wrong, right? So I said, well, do you think there are any moral absolutes? He goes, no, of course not, which is what an atheist is going to say. You can do this exact same thing. I'm just giving you a method that will absolutely work every time. So I said, now, do you think there are any moral absolutes? Of course not, man. So what is morality? Well, everybody makes up their own mind. So what about other countries? No, every country has their own moral laws. That's what he said. I'm leading him to doom. Oh, every country makes up their own rules. Yeah, absolutely. So really, we shouldn't be telling any other country what they're doing. No, every country makes up their own rules. We all have our own courts. That's the way it works. So now, after he's exposed his fortress of relativism, we are going to hit him with a piece of reality. What about Hitler and what he did with the Jews in the Second World War? What do you think of that? See, that's a real thing. That's a real piece of moral knowledge he has. He knows it's wrong. However, he just stated to me that morality is relative. So you can't criticize the Jews, right? Not criticize Hitler. Every country does their own thing. You can't talk about Germany now. But he's got a problem. He knows a moral truth in his heart, but his mind has already led him to deception. See, I've led him down the path and showed him the cliff. And are you going to jump off that cliff, buddy? So I said, so what do you think? Was Hitler right or wrong in what he did? He knew he couldn't criticize Hitler because he told me every country has their own rules, right? So he's not going to go there, is he? He's going to look like a fool. I'm sitting there looking sideways at him, just watching his face quiver, because I could see he's having a meltdown, brain freeze. I thought, yeah, you're going to have explosion. So I said, well, was he right or wrong? You could see him going between the two. If Hitler was wrong, then he's contradicted himself. He's judged a nation. He shouldn't have. If Hitler was right, then he's also going to realize he contradicted his own sense of moral lawness, that history has declared Hitler to be an evil guy for killing however many millions he killed. So either way, he's done. You can't say yes. You can't say no. It's a checkmate, really, isn't it? It's the relativist atheist checkmate. You can do this every time. So I said, well, what do you think? I looked sideways at him. And he jumped off the cliff. He committed intellectual suicide. He said if Hitler would have won, he would have been right. Think about that. If Hitler would have won, he would have been right. But that too, isn't that a moral judgment? That's making a moral judgment. Hitler was right. If you can get away with it, it's morally. So morality for him then, it's not right or wrong. It's whatever power you have to get away with whatever you want. There's no right or wrong except power. So he realized the contradiction, that he'd absolutely not answered the question. And he turned and he literally started swearing at me about Christians. And I had never even said anything about being a Christian. You blank Christian. He literally got up and ran off. So relativism won't work because they have the knowledge of, Romans 1 says we have a conscience, we have the knowledge of God in our heart. We suppress the truth. So every human does not want to be raped, murdered, dismembered, have their car stolen, etc. etc. The Bible is right when it says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So that is a really basic moral code that really works everywhere if we apply it. But nobody wants to have their car stolen, but there are car thieves. But they don't want it to happen to them. So all truths are absolute, which means they are for everywhere at all times. They're not relative, they're not situational. And the Bible gives us a guideline with the Ten Commandments. And what you found earlier is most societies, if not all of them, have some measure of all those 10 commandments and more. So they have the knowledge of God. There's more evidence for you. All humans have the knowledge of certain moral codes in every society. And if evolution were true, that would not be true. Okay. Morality is relative because, this is people who say morality is relative, because societies all have different moral codes. So everyone should keep within the moral code of their society, do what is right in that society. So these are the arguments of the moral relativists, but I've just destroyed this one already. Others say morality is relative because of individuals all have different ideas of what is right for them and what is right for you. Some say morality is relative because of cultures see things differently, so there can be no universal ways for everyone. So back to the first part. We'll finish this, I'm sorry. What are the 7 fatal flaws of relativism then? 7 fatal flaws. 1, relativists can't accuse others of wrongdoing. And this person did. You just ask them, what do you think about the government? That's wrong. What do you think about that? That's right. As soon as they open their mouth with right or wrong, and they've expressed the idea that morality is not absolute, that is a whopping contradiction. So they cannot say anything's wrong. The relativists can't complain about the problem of evil, and they do. It's wrong, these pipelines. It's evil, this pipeline, or whatever. They complain about the problem of evil. They shouldn't be talking about that at all, if relativism is true. Relativists can't place blame or accept praise for anything. Nobody's ever wrong or ever right. Relativists can't make charges of unfairness or injustice. Relativists can't improve their morality. Can't become better. You're a killer, you're a serial rapist. Can't put you in jail because that's your view of reality. That's what why do you think some of the courts are letting off some of these people who do heinous crimes? They're putting them back on the street, right? The judges are into this stuff. Well, you know, he was born that way. He was born on the bad side of Chilliwack or Sydney, Australia. And, you know, his parents were drinkers and, you know, well, that doesn't make you choose what you choose. You can be influenced, but you still have, God says you'll be judged for your own sin, right? Relativists can't hold meaningful moral discussions. And yet they'll do all these things when you talk to them. So just try that next time. Talk about some moral things happening in society. Ask them if there are any moral absolutes for everybody. And then you then give them a real life situation. If they say what's right for you is right for you and what's wrong for you, them is different to you, say, well, just give me, can I have your wallet? Give me your wallet. They're going to go, well, no, why not? I want it. I want that money in your wallet. Give it to me. No, why? Well, that's not right. What do you mean right? You just said there was no right. Here's a bit more evidence. What do you mean? What do you mean it's not right? You just said morality is what I want. I want. Give me. You see, life doesn't work under the philosophy of relativism. It could not work. And I've just proved that. And so we must never join the secularists in our country, secularism, which are giving moral notions that are biblical, throwing them out, giving them discredit, whilst ushering in relativism, which can only lead to chaos and anarchy on the streets, which is just what we've been having, while one particular ethnic group is given priority over every other community group. So why in a democracy does one cultural group have priority over my cultural group? I'm born here, they're born here, we're citizens, I have a culture, they have a culture. Why should the government give one culture preference? Right? It's a fact. So what you have, you understand this. It's not, this world is not a just world. This is a wicked world. Governments have philosophies. Governments are guided by policies which are formed on philosophies and agendas, which then expose their hypocrisy, expose their contradiction. That's what Christians being involved in government or education or anything are there for, to help expose evil. Ephesians 5:11, do not participate with the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but expose them. I count that as a big task for Christians living in today's world. Don't participate, don't endorse them, certainly don't celebrate perverted lifestyles. I'm not going to celebrate, I don't believe any leader should be marching in pride parades, or I would expect them to march in a Filipino parade, and a Spanish parade, and a German parade, and an East Indian parade. Any communities. Why should a community be defined by their sexual desires? That's what this is. You're being defined by your sexual desires. That's your community. And we're going to march in the street for that, half naked. And we're going to celebrate that community. Well, I want to celebrate somebody else's community then. Why not celebrate this one or that one or this one or that one? So you see the contradiction? We're in an age when the unrighteous are in authority, Proverbs 29:2, when the wicked rule, the people will suffer. When the righteous are in authority, the people will be blessed. So when we want righteous people to start running, we want righteous people to start get elected. We want to vote out the bad people. But when people are blind, and when they're told they can have free this and free that and free this and free that, more freedom, more stuff given to you, and you don't have to work a day in your life, they'll vote for that. And that's exactly why we got the prime minister we got now. See, I heard him when he was in election phase. He wandered all over Eastern Canada. Every one of those electorates in east of Canada voted for that guy because he promised this. We're bankrupt, and he hasn't delivered on any of it. So watch out for the liars. Watch out for the philosophies. Got a question? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this one.
There's
Yeah,
6, there is one
Oh.
missing.
Did I miss anyone? Oh, thank you. Relativists can't promote the obligation of tolerance. That's a big one too. Why should I be tolerant? Why should I be tolerant of this one community group or this group that identifies with their sexual desires? Why should I be? Are they tolerant of me? Are they tolerant? Are they exhibiting tolerance towards other groups by blocking those rail lines and ships and harbors and everything else? What tolerance are they showing? There is a proper place to display your preference. It's called a sidewalk or a parking lot, not to take away the rights of other people. I'm getting into politics now, but politics and ethics are involved, right? All these subjects are intertwined, by the way. You can't sort of separate ethics out from politics or law, because laws are based on an ethical framework. You're guilty of what? Murder in the first degree. Who says? We do. Who are you? The court. How did you get your decision? In the past, it was all made on divine law from the Bible. Our laws were based on the Bible. The USA, Australia, the British Commonwealth, Europe in large. And so now they want to shift to some UN basis. Danger, danger, danger. Okay, morality will be expressed. What's that? Exactly. And in fact, we should be doing that. There would be nothing wrong, all of us getting together and having a march and say, support heterosexual marriage. And if they fine you, huh? Yeah, they would if they stop that. I think we should get out. No, you've got to be careful.
I think we should.
I mean, look, let me tell you, that would be exactly
That's our right.
right that since they've demonstrated that principle, that the RCMP have not acted on the law and allowed people, and I watched them, I saw SkyTrain stations blocked. We can block abortion clinics. We can block streets with abortion signs. Now, I've done a lot of anti-abortion things that we stick to the sidewalk. But you know what? What if we march down to the center of town in this thing, we block the intersection? You got 2,000, no, I appeal to the same law. We are a community who are concerned for the unborn, whose rights are being trampled. More important than a few moose in the back blocks of some tribal territory. Right? Just what would happen. And if you got arrested, this would be a marvelous way to make a statement to the city, to the nation. Hey, people can block streets for moose. I'm being a bit facetious, but you know, we want to keep those timbers out there untrampled. We don't want any pipeline going through it. But you can't do that for the unborn. See the contradiction there? I wonder what would happen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. The question is this: can you block anything you want in Canada now? That's what we're testing. Who cares what your reason is? Those people gave a reason. We can have our reason. We have our culture. They have their culture. Their culture says they want to do this. Our culture says we want to do that. Why can't we do that? If they say, well, it's illegal, that was illegal. You're not enforcing the law there. How can you enforce the law here? You know, it is a case to push and probe the courts. You see what I'm saying? What is the difference here? It could be a time for Christians to start acting, to make a demonstration for against abortion, block some intersections. See what the media would say. See if you'd rally up a country. Let's defund abortion. You know, let's get it. It would be unbelievable. And you know, you're not going to get a couple of hundred here. You'd have thousands just in this city, right? They're not going to arrest you all. On what charge? Blocking the road. Oh, but hey, Your Honor, aren't they still blocking the roads? So, see what I'm saying here? Is this a thing God might inspire us to do? Maybe. Okay, so there is the problem of relativism. Let's try to press on. I know I talk too much, but hey, that's part of the deal. I want to go to Marxism. Marxism, the philosophy of Karl Marx. When we did the philosophy section, I never gave you the full principles of the Marxist philosophy, and I want to do that now, just to recap, because it's also based on this ethical section we're in. Okay, Marxism, the philosophy of Marx. He mingled a few philosophies together through people like Hegel, as we read about in the book here. Hegel was one of the founders of the ideas in which he used. Others, Feuerbach and a few others. But the four basic foundations of Marxism. And people don't understand this because they think that somebody like, well, I don't want to date this tape. So this person running in the United States who's extreme left, who really is a communist, is really talking about good things because, yeah. So here are they don't even understand what Marxism is. And yet what he's promoting is leading to a Marxist-controlled political structure for the United States. Now, here's what Marxism is. And I taught a university course one time, and a student said to me, Jesus was a communist, wasn't he, Professor? And I said, well, that's an interesting idea you've got there. Can't laugh. You're not supposed to laugh at students, you know. Kind of hurts their feelings. Poor little snowflakes. But, you know, so I couldn't laugh. We have to respect their ideas. And then fancy that. Oh, I said, you know, that's interesting. He said, well, where did you get that from? Well, Jesus was well, he said, you know, here in the Bible verse that you should share everything with one another. Jesus told them to share what they had with others. He said, that's communism, right? I said, no, that's generosity. Right? Now, Jesus didn't say to do it at all times because he still had clothes and he still ate. So obviously, Jesus never gave away everything he had, or he'd be naked. He wasn't, and he still ate. So he didn't give away all his food, right? So obviously, it's not talking about some extreme form of you have nothing. But anyway, I said, no, that's generosity. He was in that situation saying, look, share what you have with others. Maybe not everything, but with something. So I'm going to get to what Marxism is. So this student misidentifying a Bible verse with a very evil philosophy and saying that Jesus was into that philosophy was to me an abomination. Jesus is not a feminist. He's not a hedonist. He's not a socialist, an environmentalist, or any other ism. He's God. So Jesus created females. He created the environment. He designed the idea of society through marriage. He's committed to those things, but he's not into the philosophies humans have about those things. Are you with me? So don't bring any philosophy into the Bible and tell me that that verse is feminism, or that verse is environmentalism, or that verse is socialism, or that verse is communism. Those ideas are all human philosophies, and they're not in the Bible. Females are, environmental, etc. So when Jesus said, share your food, I call it generosity. That's what it is on the surface of it. Putting a communist label on that is to misunderstand Marxism. Here's what Marxism is. There are four basic ideas behind Marxism. One is materialism. There is nothing in the universe but matter. Of course, the Marxist is already wrong, because what about all the laws of physics? What about gravity? It's not material. So the atheist is already doomed. He lives in a universe with non-physical things, and he only has matter to try and explain it. So, hey, already I can see that atheism's false. It can't explain the origin. I'm just keep pointing back to this gentleman because he was on Evans. So I would say, right, the existence of non-physical laws like gravity are proof that the universe came from a supernatural source. Yeah, well, there's no way to demonstrate that. You can't demonstrate that. And besides, the stars didn't create their orbits and the gravity that holds galaxies together. The universe is full of gravity, and the scientists absolutely are at the point of like, we can't explain gravity. Why is it? See, the point is they can't. Everything. So, one, materialism, number one. Number two is nature acts dialectically. Remember I said 2 steps forward, 1 step back? That to strike a nail into a block of wood, there's 2 actions. The forward striking and the pulling back of the hammer, forward and back. So they believe that this illustrates that matter, physical matter, atoms and molecules behave like this, okay? That matter acts dialectically. It goes forward and back and forward and back in these movements, that it is like a machine. Third, social and political evolution are a fact, not just biological evolution. So Marx taught that since we are all matter, and since matter evolves, then the societies in which these humans are involved also evolve. Matter evolves societies through social and political stages. And he had 5 stages. So he taught that matter was like a machine, just like he believed evolution went from one cell to a dog and a fish. It organized into more sophisticated structures, get it? If you believe in evolution, which he did. So therefore, it must be a case that societies also evolve into more sophisticated and better stages. You following where it's going to go? Absolutely. So he came up with a five-stage evolution of societies. Societies start off as slave societies. They own slaves, they kill the slaves. Everybody's just got their slaves. And then they move to feudal systems. The feudal lord gathers his servants and his slaves into an area and has a little town feudal system that he runs. And then from a feudal system, it goes to capitalism. And that's what Marx taught where we're at now. We're at the capitalist system. But he believed that it would go to the next stage, which is socialism. So from capitalism, societies will eventually become socialistic. And from socialism, they would make the final leap into perfection, which would be communism. Communism is the highest form, he said, of social political evolution. But the problem is, we're stuck in the capitalist system. Now, don't believe what I'm saying. This is what he taught. Okay, this is false. His analysis of 5 stages are arbitrary. His picking of capitalism as a word is arbitrary. Capitalism, we'll get to that when we get to economics, is an ism created by humans, used by Marx and Lenin to paint a picture of an evil structure. Capitalist. What is capital? It's what you own. Capitalism doesn't even make sense. The philosophy of private ownership. Or philosophy of ownership. So capitalism became the evil target. And the trouble with Marx, or in his view, the good thing, is he thought he had the answer as to how to move evolution along quicker. You know, evolution takes supposedly a few hundreds of millions of years. He can't wait. So he figured he had the answer as to how to move this machine, right? Remember, it's a big machine. It's just like that tree out there, you know, it's just sitting there. It's going to take a long time before that tree becomes a bird or whatever, but, you know, so we can't wait. So he figured out the only way to jolt this process is to inject a revolution. How convenient. A revolution, an invasion. So we need to start a revolution. We need to attack a society that's in the capitalist stage. By attacking it and destroying its stable foundations of political and economic structures, social structures, we can destabilize it. And when you destabilize it, it will lurch to the social status. So they invaded from 1917 at the Bolshevik Revolution, when Lenin put Marxism into practice, 1917, took power over the Soviet Union, where Christianity had been for almost 1,000 years, right? Don't forget that, under the czars. Christianity has been in the Soviet Union over 1,000 years. From easily, if you look at Constantinople and the Eastern Orthodox Church back then, way more than 1,000. So he launched a revolution and butchered millions of people who were the kulaks. They had 40 million people slaughtered. He starved them all out, took away all the private ownership, collectivized all the farms, starved them out, butchered them all. Millions and millions in the Ukraine, Poland were destroyed by communist invasion of Poland, East Europe, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia. And they spread and they kept just taking countries by revolution over and over and over. It's Czechoslovakia in 1968. Some people remember. So they just kept invading, and they would win, and the West wasn't doing anything to stop them. Like, hey, this is working. And then they launched into South America, and then you got all those Cuba, you've got the Sandinistas, you had revolutionary movements in Colombia and Nicaragua and Venezuela and all over there. And then they got into Africa and spreading their revolution through places like Angola and Mozambique. I mean, just terrible, terrible things happened. And then they started wars. You had the Korean War in '52. You had the Vietnam War that went from the 50s to 1975. They just kept springing out, starting wars, and the West would try to stop it, and they'd spring out somewhere else. Because the idea was, we will launch a revolution, we'll invade Vietnam, and the West will respond, like the hammer. We will pull back, but we will strike again. So whatever they did, it seemed to work. They would withdraw, but press further. Until Ronald Reagan in 1984 said, that's it. Woke up and said, that is the evil empire. He was laughed at by the media. He was right. And he stared down Gorbachev in Iceland, the Icelandic summit, Reykjavik, and said, I'm not giving you any more food. You go feed yourself. You're spending all your money on military. U.S. spent 0.25% of the GDP. I think the Soviet Union was spending, 40%. Look at the time. It's so hard. It's just getting going. Okay, we're going to end here. Anyway, the final stage, if you write this down, social political evolution. And the fourth stage, progress is inherent within change. So he taught that if we just launch a revolution, change will occur. Therefore, it'll be progress, because evolution always progresses, doesn't digress. So that's why cultural Marxists in our civilization here want to change their definitions of marriage, because everything is progress. They call themselves progressives for that reason, because we need to get rid of this old definition of marriage and progress, because they're evolutionists and they're Marxists. So they believe that destroying old definitions of male, female, gender, marriage, family, all that stuff destabilizes this and ushers us towards the perfect socialist and then communist utopia. And in the States, they've got people running on those platforms. And we do here too. So to end, if I could have just a couple of minutes, if you need to leave, feel free, but I have to, you know what, I have to try and quickly end this on ethics. So let's move back. That's Marxism. But here, the key thing about communism and its governments today is that they believe the Communist Party is the vanguard, the ones who are going to bring in the communist takeovers. And China is very active. Putin in Russia, very active. They arm the Muslims. They arm Iran to strike the US. The US is the only country that stands between freedom for most countries in the world and an Islamic dictatorship or a communist dictatorship. The two worldviews that are the source of most of the problems on this planet are Marxism and Islam, both having come from supposed angels' visits. Think about it. And the target is the Judeo-Christian West, and particularly America, because it's the only one with the military power to keep both those at bay. And you think about what this current president has done to push back against China and to push back against Putin and Russia, and to push back and take the nuke away from Iran. Praise God for that. So let me tell you, God is working, and he doesn't always work through the people you think, but he has objectives, and one of them is we have to deal with these two worldviews that are dominating our planet. But the Marxists are inside here. They call themselves progressives. They are born in these countries, but their mindset is as bad as North Korea. They want more government power, more court power, less individual freedom, less freedom for parents to determine what sex, what sexual courses or education their kids get. We're going to put it in the state now to teach them all about this. Sex education is a big course in the school system. That should be parental. That should not be in there, in my view. So lots of things are being taken over by the state in the guise of we're going to help you do the good thing. Well, it's not the good thing for Christians. Our definition of good is not their definition of good. They have secularism. We have biblical theism. So Marxism has political objectives, and they are deconstructing some of our cultural terms and getting away with it. Okay, so quickly, new spirituality. What about ethics for people who believe we are reincarnated? We ourselves are God. Well, ethics then is anything that they feel that enhances their ability to become more God. So it's really popular in Hollywood because after all, there's no God, but hey, I am. And look at me, I'm a multi-millionaire, billionaire Hollywood movie star. I must have got here because of my karma. So I deserve this, and I need to help myself get ushered even higher. I mean, it's totally an ego-based worldview. New spirituality. Ethics is in you. It's what you yourself define to feel right for you. Okay, so you're not going to get much out of that one. Postmodernism, quickly looking at that, page 239, if you could just give me a couple of minutes. Postmodernists believe that any universal narrative like Christianity or Islam or anything is false, and truth must reside in everybody's gender or their culture or their ethnic group. So truth is what your ethnic group says. And if another ethnic group has their view, then you can't tell them they're wrong. So we got gender groups now, we got sexual identity groups, and that's what's happened. Postmodernists have said, hey, you know, you need to celebrate that group that defines their community on the basis of their sexual practice. That's what's happening, is that postmodernists are having their way. Universal moral principles must be eradicated, according to postmodernists, and reverence for individual and cultural uniqueness inculcated. I'm on the bottom of page 239, the last, second last paragraph. There it is right there. Universal moral principles must be eradicated and reverence for individual and cultural uniqueness. That's gay parades. You've got to celebrate that. Cultural uniqueness. So how did the cultural get defined by their sexual desires? Well, it did. It just did in our lifetime. And that culture is taking preference. And other cultures are taking preference. So anyone that a postmodernist feels is affected by discrimination becomes their hero. So natives who feel their land is being taken, they are heroes who must be protected, and they can block anything they want. Oh, these LGBTQ can do all the activism they want. They can never do any wrong. They're an oppressed group, and all oppressed groups must be liberated. That's a Marxist doctrine. All oppression must be eliminated. And they look for oppression. They look for victims. We see people claiming themselves as a victim. And lo and behold, the whole court and government system gets behind them to protect them from everybody else. We are the oppressors of these native peoples. We are the oppressors of the LGBTQ if you don't celebrate their worldview. Well, we can see where we're at. We're under an atheist-dominated world, and cultural relativism under postmodernism is having a big impact. Okay, Islam, lastly then, is Muslims believe in ethics. They do have a God. His name is Allah. Allah and Yahweh are not the same, not by a long shot. They believe in laws that have been written down in the Quran. The Quran came primarily from Muhammad, and they want to make these laws into Sharia applied principles. So anywhere in Europe or Canada, they want to apply Sharia law. That's to bring their ethical models into the Canadian structure of law and implement it. And that's what's being pushed all over the Western world, Sharia law. What would Muhammad do? They don't so much have the model of God as what did Muhammad do in this circumstance. So they idolize, they worship everything Muhammad did. So he had a 7-year-old wife. There are countries in the Muslim world that have men of 35 marrying 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds. Jordan does it, other countries. So Islam has moral absolutes, but vastly different in many ways from ours. Their system is to earn them a place in heaven. They have strict religious rules they have to obey, like going to Mecca, fasting, Ramadan, giving tithes, saying 5 times a day that there's no God but Allah, etc. So their ethics has moral absolutes, but from a different basis than ours, and the application of the punishments for theft or cutting off of hands. So when Muslims migrate into a non-Muslim area, there are 57 Muslim majority countries. When they come into the Western world, which is non-Muslim, which is some Judeo-Christian, mostly Judeo-Christian laws under the guise of atheism, they want to change it right away because they want to make it perfect. And so does that person running in the United States for president, wants to bring his communism in there to perfect America. So they will destroy it, not perfect it, because if you take the wrong manual to fix your Kia car or your Ford, will it work? No. But you won't notice it right away until it starts breaking down the motor because you missed that, you missed the measurement there and you didn't put the oil there. So you cannot use the wrong manual to make your car work. You cannot use the wrong worldview to make your civilization work. Christianity has been proven, here's the evidence, Judeo-Christian civilizations are vastly improved over any Muslim or Hindu or animistic civilization, or Hitler, or any communist nation. People are fleeing to get into these societies of ours because of what? Freedom, opportunity, justice, things seem to work. We need to tell them, you know why it's so nice here? It's Christianity. It came from a Christian foundation, not a Hindu, not a Buddhist, not a Muslim. So we need to be proud of the fact that Christianity works, and you're living in an example of that, mostly, except for some of these perverted laws that have come down on us, like abortion and drugs and infanticide. But you know, this was produced relatively quickly, 150 years it took to build a reasonably decent civilization compared to Europe, compared to Africa, compared to Indonesia, it's had 1,500 years, compared to India, it's had 3,000 years to work on it. Why didn't they put people on the moon? America did in less than 200 years. What's the difference? If you build your house on the rock, things will work. If you build your house on the sand, Jesus said, when the winds blow, it will come down. So ethically speaking, relativism doesn't work. There's no foundation in postmodernism. It's relativism in another form. There's no foundation in new spirituality. It's yourself, what you yourself feel is good for you, which is simply another form of relativism. It's not going to work under the Islamic structure because of the nature of their God and the kinds of rules that they implement as a result of their moral decisions that Muhammad made as a human. A simple human made decisions. Rape is included in there. Murder is included in there. Terrorism is included in there. These are tough foundations to put into any civilization and see them working, which is why in the 57 Muslim majority countries on this planet, none of them can equal the life value, the life properties, the rights, the freedoms for women that this country can offer, which is not built on Islam. So the evidence morally stands with Christianity that has produced a fruit that you and I can see all around us, and it works. So thank you for your time on this one. We will not take a great look at Christianity because we're going to keep looking at it, but the Bible states ethics comes from God because He is moral. He didn't create morality. God is moral by nature. He is loving. So God did not set up a system. He created you, and you in your nature, being made in His image, have a conscience and a heart, and God has a heart. So God is moral, and that's why you have that sense of moral oughtness and what we ought to do, or else we'd never feel guilty. We wouldn't feel sin as anything, but we all have a conscience. So the Bible describes us more accurately than atheism does. And the Bible God is moral, and as long as we have a reference point to what is good, then we can solve disputes here. We can have laws that work. If you take away God, you now are left in a jungle of competing human interests, and there will be no definitions fixed. And the innocent will suffer when the wicked are in power. We see that through abortion. So the Bible is right. We have to honor Him, obey His rules, just like you obey the Ford manufacturer of your truck for your own good, because it was made with ethics in mind. God designed us to live within a framework, a moral framework of love, compassion, justice, etc., etc. Amen. Okay, so we'll see you next week.
In 2 weeks.